All right. Good morning, everybody. It's been 3 months since I've appeared on this show. I did not forget how to run the intro there. Episode 302, to be exact, of Hobby Hotline. I'm joined with, this is kind of an OG show. We have some of the early original members of Hobby Hotline, 300 something episodes in. Mr. Rich Klein up at the top right, at least on my screen, and our youngest member, who's not he's getting a little bit older and catching up to us, Brody, TK. What's up, gentlemen?
Good morning, John.
All
Hey
right,
there,
yeah, battle. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
it's a little warm, but a beautiful morning here in DFW. And I just want to start with a couple house cleaning notes, so to speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, I know John is very big in saying this, and I agree with him. When I was running shows, I always ran discounts at my table and did free admission for military members if I had shows on Memorial Day or Veterans Day area. This is Memorial Day weekend. It just does not mean Memorial Day sales and barbecue. Let's remember what Memorial Day is really about. It's about thanking those who have come before us. And that's the real purpose. And we always dedicate ourselves to those who serve that allow us to do shows like this. And also, in another bit of house clearing notes, in about 4 weeks, we will be leading off Hobby Palooza, as we've done for the last few years. But the one difference is it will be a special hour. It will begin at 10 a.m. Eastern instead of 11 a.m. Eastern. And it will be a lot of us will be there that day to join in. But we're looking forward. Hobby Palooza is under a little bit of new management. Bench Clear Media has passed the baton on, but we are blessed to be on the next Hobby Palooza, leading it off as we've done for the last few years.
Yeah, pretty cool. Like you said, kind of led by a new group. On a good note, it was handed to them to take the baton. Again, that'll be June 22nd, so it's a Saturday, but instead of 11 a.m. Eastern, will be 10 a.m. Eastern. So it's still launched just an hour earlier. Get your cup of coffee. Folks, I apologize in advance. You probably can tell maybe by my voice. Battling a little cold in my chest. We'll like an athlete, we'll play hurt and get through it. And great job, Rich, pointing out, Memorial Day weekend. Sometimes people confuse Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day, where we celebrate all those who are serving in the past, currently serving. Memorial Day is what it sounds like. We remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice and who are no longer with us, who served their country to give us the freedoms we have, like collecting sports cards and doing content creation. So I know it's a fun weekend where we spend time with families, cookouts, traveling, but take a minute sometime during the time off to think about those who are no longer with us, to enjoy those things that we get to. So with that being said, we'll get
Brody,
started.
Brody, what you got?
Yeah, go ahead, Brody.
I agree with what John said. Take a moment this weekend and remember those who did the ultimate sacrifice this weekend at some point.
All right, guys. Thank you, Brody. Yeah, it only takes a minute just kind of to think about that. All right, let's start off with what I'll say is kind of a big story, right? The Babe Ruth jersey from photo matched to the called shot in the 32 World Series. It's going up on Heritage Auctions in August 22nd. So you got a couple months to save your pennies up to make a run at this. Estimated to go for 30 million bucks. It's a historic piece of memorabilia. Number one, you don't see many Babe Ruth jerseys, period, and the fact that it's photo matched to that event. I have seen some people claim how do they really know, and is it really? But assuming it is the case, it's valued at an estimated value of $30 million. I'm not going to be bidding on it. I don't know about Mr. Brody, but some thoughts here, guys, on a historic piece of memorabilia that's going to change hands here, and someone's going to own this.
I mean, I'm fine with my Southside shirt right now, to be honest. This is looking pretty cool, even though we're not playing very good. But it's awesome jersey, but $30 million. Whew.
Well,
Man.
Brody, look at it this way. There's only one of these. He didn't change
Yeah.
jerseys during the game. It is one of the most iconic moments in baseball history. And there's only one. I mean, you have 33 Gowdies. You have hundreds, if not thousands, of 33 Gowdies. You have hundreds, if not thousands, of 52 Mantles. You have 100 to 200 of T206 Wagners. You got one of these. And it's photo matched to a moment that's immortalized. You know, the Babe Ruth shot. Babe Ruth is a name that kids today know. I mean, they may not know much about baseball history. Kids still know the name Babe Ruth. There's just something about that name and that background and the fact that he was a beloved Yankee, and that makes it special. And if you want an ultimate collectible, this is it. And I'm probably speaking on this just as well as Chris Ivey did when he did an interview with our own Hobby News Daily and Hobby Hotline host Danny Black earlier this week, which you can find on YouTube and all your various podcast sources.
You know what? Uncle Rich makes some good points right there. If I had $30 million, I would buy this jersey.
If I had $30 million, I would buy this too, but I'd also think about what else I want to do with my money.
Guys, piggybacking off some of the chat comments, it's a good point, right? Even the called shot itself is debated if that's what he was actually doing. And then there is some comments saying that the photo match is iffy at best. I mean, what do we think about that? I mean, it's still a Ruth jersey. That much I think we can hang our hat on. But there's some, question to the authenticity of not only, not the event itself, right? People, I watched the video where people were saying he wasn't calling a shot. He was pointing to something or taking a verbal shot at the Cubs. They were kind of jawing with each other. Other people say he did pick a spot in the stands and said he was going to hit it there. So that's even up for debate. And then there's other people who feel like the photo match is not 100%. I guess comments on that. And do we think this is going to hit the $30 million Heritage estimated for? I mean, you can estimate an item for any price you want, but will it get that? That's a whole nother show.
Well, I think.
Well, go ahead, Brody.
I think if you're bidding on something, and if you question if you think it's authentic, I mean, whatever the price is, and you're kind of questioning it if it's authentic, at least from me, I would not bid too high on it if you're a little questionable on its authenticity. Man, I can't speak today. I'm finally out of school and I can't speak. But will it go 30 million? I think it definitely has a chance because there's a lot of Yankees fans out there, a lot of Yankees super collectors.
Well, Brody, you need to come to Texas. We're done with school. Yesterday was the last day of school here. You would have June and July off instead of whenever your Chicago area schools. When does your Chicago area school system end?
Chicago usually goes till June. Like the suburbs kind of end at the end of May.
Okay. New York City ran to like June 21st when I was growing up.
Wow.
Yeah. But then again, they didn't begin till after Labor Day. Here in Texas, you begin about in the first week in August. So everything is different. That has to do with the national and something I wrote and why they try to do the national when they do it, which is a different subject. But do you really think the owner would be upset if he only got $25 million for this? I don't think so. And depending on what they paid for it, it's probably a really good profit. So what's the difference between 25, 30, 40? As Brody correctly pointed out, you've got a lot of Yankee fans. Many of them have very, very deep pockets. And all you need is two of them to bid against each other to say, I want that. And that's all you need.
Yeah, that's true. I will say this. I'll go on record. We'll see. We'll say on August 26th if I'm right and wrong. I'd be very surprised if this brings 30 million bucks. It's going to bring millions of dollars. Don't get me wrong. But I a lot of the comments, there's a lot of stuff up in the air, a lot of question marks. Stooks had a great comment. Like, if I'm not 100% sure, I'm probably not bidding, if at all, or a crazy amount of money. So I think this will get somewhere what it's advertised at and a Ruth Jersey would normally get. I think it will be in between those two things. But like you said, Rich, it just takes two people with a lot of zeros in their bank account and numbers in front of it to get into a bidding war. And we've seen that happen. It won't be the first time that ever happens. It happens quite a bit. And, we'll see, who where it goes and what happens to it after that. There was a funny comment. I don't know if you guys caught it, that Fanatics would buy it and then make some memorabilia cards out of it. Obviously, tongue in cheek, would not be the case. That's a whole nother topic in its own right, like cutting up old vintage jerseys for cardboard's sake. But it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Really early to promo it with it starting on August 22nd, but they're trying to build the buzz on it. There's also a Mantle jersey in the same auction that came out of that Danny Black, Chris Ivy interview from, I believe, the 53 series.
I thought it was 52. I thought it was a 52 Game 7 uniform.
Game 6 and Game 7. It might be 52. It might be off by a year, but Mantle had two pretty big games in it. That's not estimated to bring what this jersey will bring, but it's another great piece of history in that auction. And that auction looks like it's gonna set some records probably for money brought in on some of these items. So here's a great. I like this question. Does Major League Baseball ever raise funds to buy items like this? Legit question, because they do. They do, and Major League Baseball, not the Hall of Fame itself. They have a budget, but Major League Baseball, guys, has bought stuff via auctions or private sale, and then put it on loan to the Hall of Fame. And sometimes you'll see that. I'm close to the Hall of Fame, about an hour away. You'll see, like, on the placard, like, on loan from Major League Baseball. So it's a great question. They do it. Might they do it here? Major League Baseball has $30 million very easily. That's a drop in the bucket for them. That I wouldn't be opposed to that. That would be nice. And then we can all enjoy it, right? We can all go to Cooperstown when we can get there and enjoy seeing the jersey rather than it be in somebody's secret room in their basement or house. Although there's nothing wrong with that. If you pay, you pay for it, you get the spoils of your labor. But that would be ideal, right? Major League Baseball wins this auction or acquires it, and it goes to the Hall of Fame. Thoughts there before we move on?
That's a great question. I love the question, and I think that would be pretty cool if Major League Baseball is able to bid on it. It'd be pretty cool.
Well, they certainly have, between the owners and the leagues and all that, they certainly have the money. That can be their decision as to what they want to do. That is not a decision for us to make. But as John points out, you can have items sort of stored away and then donate. When I say donated, given to the Hall of Fames to display or take on various road trips. So yes, and just remember, the Hall of Fame is actually a for-profit organization. So they probably won't be bidding on this, but there are things they will buy and chase down. And way back, in the dark ages, when Barry Halper's collection got sold after he died, the Hall of Fame was given certain items from the collection. just as a way for them not to have to be involved in all the bidding. They made sure to give the Hall of Fame some items. Because at the time, Halper's collection, which he sort of had in his basement, was a great collection, was on a par with a lot of the stuff at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and he, like you said, he did donate some stuff to the Hall. I see some Marshall Fogel comments. He was a recent guest on Sports Card Nation. This is right up his alley. Now, I don't know whether he's interested or not. I haven't spoken to him. Might he buy it? And talking to Marshall on the program, some of his stuff's at the Hall of Fame too. So whoever the buyer winds up being, whether it's Fogel, someone else, anyone can loan it to the Hall of Fame, and you better believe the Hall of Fame would be interested in making a display for a jersey of this substance. So maybe we will see it at the Hall, even if a private buyer buys it. But we'll see. Maybe Marshall Fogel. If he buys it, I'll see if I can get him back on and talk about that. That would be a pretty interesting conversation, to say the least. All right, guys, let's move on. We have a case solved. The Mystery Machine went to Strongsville, Ohio, and saved the day. The $2.1 million Strongsville theft is solved. Actually, kudos to the Strongsville police. Was an inside job, which we kind of suspected from the early going. This is your perpetrator here. I don't like to give him some free pub, but let's talk about him. Jacob Paxton. No, I don't believe he's the same guy from Cobra Kai series, but has a resemblance to him. I'm going to take him off. I don't want to look at him anymore. But I think this story's made the rounds, right? Memory Lane had $2.1 million in cards shipped to the front desk at the Best Western, later to be picked up for their display at the Strongsville, Ohio show, which is a vintage only show. When they came a few days later to pick up their cards, it was nowhere to be found. A couple heritage boxes, which just contained catalogs, were opened up like someone was looking to see what was in it. But the Memory Lane $2 million worth of cards were gone. It would contain 54 cards in total. 52 of the cards were recovered. This Paxton character kept them at his friend's house. 2 cards are not recovered, guys. I believe it was a Walter Johnson and I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. Play ball, PSA 5, Ted Williams, 41, and a PSA 5 T204 Ramley Walter Johnson. Both of those cards estimated at $90,000. So the bulk of the collection is recovered. Memory Lane got very lucky here and fortunate. Again, done by an employee, opened the box, liked what he saw, took it home, eventually made his way to his friend's house, probably thinking, well, if they come for me at my house, it won't be here. But however they solved it, it's kind of what I thought was going to happen. It was someone from Best Western. We could do a whole show, guys. I've already talked about this, about why that kind of value in a box was shipped to a front desk at a hotel with people making $15 to $20 an hour. And listen, most of those people are probably upstanding citizens, but it only takes one that isn't. To me, that thing should be in an employee's hand in their vehicle. There's armored shipping. There's other shipping methods. They got very lucky here. I think at the end of the day, that's the moral of the story. Memory Lane got very lucky here. And there better be a nice, something towards the Strongsville police for getting this back. We're going to talk about another story where the ending's not as happy as this one, Richard Brody. But kind of thoughts on this?
Well, there are 3 crime stories this week. On this one, I'm going to start with just a story from the hobby's past, which has nothing to do with anybody stealing anything. Way back in the day, even before John Newman was born, in 1985, Gavin Riley, one of the founders of the first National, they held the National in Disneyland Hotel. And Gavin Riley offered for a lot of dealers who didn't want to drive with their stuff cross country or take it on a plane or whatever. He held everybody, when I say everybody, he held your material at his house before the show, and he brought it to you at the show. Gavin was an upstanding citizen. I believe he's still around. He's one of the key founding fathers of the hobby on the West Coast. So nothing bad. But I mean, just think today if Rich Klein offered, hey, you're coming to the Dallas Card Show, ship me your stuff. Good luck with that. And that, even though I wouldn't do anything. And I mean, and seriously, John makes a really good point. You have to be very careful on how you ship things. And I hope Memory Lane has learned, hey, the armored way you suggested, or the double security plus, $2 million worth of cards is nothing to sneeze at. $90,000 worth of cards is nothing to sneeze at. Protect your cards. I mean, it's not a hard concept.
When this story broke, Rich and Brody, and I heard how it was shipped, I was scratching my head. I thought, am I reading this right? This thing's in some kind of carrying case, and it's handcuffed to my wrist. Like, you could kill me and then chop my arm off or my wrist off, but that's how you're going to get this. But just shipping it, I think it was FedEx. I could be wrong. I believe it was a FedEx delivery to a hotel, to an employee you don't know. I mean, I'm assuming they don't know the employees that work the front desk. And even if you did, right, to me, that's something like you have to know, like, hey, this is a very expensive item. It's going to be coming this day. Can you please hold it, or, put it in the safe or what? And even that, I mean, it's just, there's so many other better options, including, you got to go to the show yourself, right? Your employees are setting up at the show to have them take it. At least they're responsible, and then who's supervising it, and you eliminate who else it could be. They got real lucky here that they got 52 of these 54 cards back. They bit the bullet here, but crazy when I thought about, I think they probably learned a lesson. I don't think they're going to handle that like that in the future. Brody, your thoughts?
Well, like you guys said, there's so much better ways to ship, and there's so much more technology, new ways to do stuff. And like you said, I think they got lucky. Only $90,000 lost. They got lucky, and I don't think they're ever going to do this again. They got lucky. They dodged a bullet here.
I will also point out, since our fellow host, Hobby Hotline host Chris Carlin, works for Collectors, and PSA is a division thereof, and now SGC too. For those people that don't like grading, and I understand why, this is one of the best aspects of grading. Cards get lost or something happens. You have a record of what card it is. You have a serial number. Unless somebody knows to break the card out and reseal it and resend it in. But most of the people who are going to do this don't know all the ins and outs of the hobby. Therefore, the cards are going to stay in their holders. Therefore, it's very trackable as to the cards, which is always, to me, one of the salient key points of why you should grade your cards, because it is something where you can deduce value. I mean, if something happens like this with insurance can't really argue. Is your Walter Johnson in excellent condition? It was third-party graded in excellent condition. It's kind of hard to argue that. I mean, they can say, well, it should have been a 4. Fine. But the point is, they can't really argue, well, it's really a Port-a-Fair card. You can't argue it. It's graded. And so grading really helps in situations like this.
Yeah, it's a great point, Rich. Even people who are not grading fans or don't like grading, period, this is where it does really serve its purpose. Is it makes these cards, it's like a VIN number on your card. You make a great point. I mean, you could crack it out, right? And I'm not condoning crime, but if I was of ill repute and I did something like that, one of the things probably I would consider doing, crack them out and sending them to another grading company and get them into a different holder. But again, like you said too, if you send a bunch of that stuff, it's going to look like a red flag, and authorities might be contacted, and you could be caught that way. So the best advice is don't be a criminal. But we all know when there's money involved, there's always going to be someone looking to take advantage of it. It'll be interesting to see what the penalty is for Mr. Paxton for this, because Rich, we're going to talk about another case here that I remembered this from 2022 at the Atlantic City National, when Gizmo's sports card, Rick Giddings, had someone he knew kind of walk away with some cards, and with the purpose of buying them and then never return. It was $100K, so not $2.1 million, but $100K is, like you said, $90K, $100K. It's a good chunk, good chunk of change. And they caught the guy, but unfortunately, the cards were not really recovered. And the guy, the person who committed the theft, was ordered to pay $10,000, Rich and Brody, not $100,000. So at the moment, Gizmo Sports Cards, Rick Giddings, is going to get $10,000, not $100,000. And I don't believe the guy that did the crime is going to serve any time. I think he's on probation and has got to pay the $10,000 back. That's crazy to me. You should be, if the cards are not recovered, you need to pay everything you stole or something. I'm assuming he had an insurance coverage. It's definitely, I believe, a tax write-off. I'm not an expert there, but there we see the other side of the coin when all the cards are not recovered and someone doing business really takes it on the chin. I'll let Rich go first here because you brought that to the show's attention. I mean, it's the opposite side of the Strongsville story.
I know Rick fairly well. He's an interesting person. But when I saw that the items, that the person had been sentenced and everything had been done, I posted on his Facebook page, what did he think? And basically the response was something to the effect that I'm really pissed. And he's right. He's really pissed. And he should be. Because granted, he knew the person, he gave him a lot of value of cards. And many times back in the day, you did things like this, but all you need is one person to do something stupid. You don't have your cards anymore. And again, I'll point out, if the cards were graded, it'd be a lot easier to prove the value for your insurance too.
Yeah, Brody, you were there. Do you remember this story? I mean, I remember this when it happened. It's surprising that we're just really kind of hearing the end result this amount of time later, and it's really at this point not a happy ending for Gizmo Cards. Your thoughts as someone who was obviously in attendance at that event?
Yeah, it feels like another thing like Atlantic City, man. Atlantic City, what didn't go very good, it doesn't seem like. But you know what? It's over with. But I mean, 10,000 for $100,000. Ouch. That stinks. That really stinks. But I remember this case, and I remember it come up right after the national happened, and what? And that.
Well, how do we deter crime, right? If you're a criminal and you see, hey, someone stole $100,000 worth of cards and only had to pay $10,000. Again, I'm not of that repute, but if I was, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. That gives me incentive to steal. Because even if I get caught, I'm only gonna have to pay back 1/10 of what I've stolen.
Right.
No one knows where these cards are, so chances are he sold them. So where's that money? Like, I'm hoping they're like looking at tracking financial records, bank accounts. But it's too bad because we see, these kind of stories are mirror images, reverse mirror images of each other. One with a really positive ending and one that looks not so positive, and it's sad. And we're going to be talking. I hate to say it, guys, but we're going to be talking about these stories continually because they just continue to happen. You brought another one to my attention, Rich, with a guy who's like a famous son of a rich guy who was selling fake graded cards. I'll let you. You have
Yeah,
more of the
there are these
details there.
two guys in the Seattle area, and they sold what is purported to be $2 million of fake graded cards, one of whom supposedly has actually done other things in the past. And when he got released from prison, he went on like a redemption tour and gave speeches about not to do things like this again. And again, this you're innocent till proven guilty. And I'm not 100% sure it's the same person, maybe 99% sure, but not 100% sure. And it's just amazing. He found a new way, along with somebody else, to do a ripoff with graded cards, no less. And reading the article, PSA was involved in helping to solve this by knowing what they know about their technology. And when I did, by the way, Chris Carlin did come to the Dallas Card Show, and we chatted for a little bit. And he told me about one thing they have, but I'm betting with Mr. Turner, with Nat Turner as the boss, they have really increased their technological game. And I bet you TSA was really very heavily involved in IDing, finding, and getting these fake graded cards off the market.
Excuse me. If you see, I've seen some of these fake PSA slabs, Rich. I gotta admit, they are very hard to tell. They're whoever's doing them is doing their due. I'm not condoning crime, but just like people who counterfeit Jordan rookies, Trout rookies, they're getting good at their craft, even though it's an illegal craft. That being said, and some of these PSA holders were very, very good and hard to tell that they weren't the real ones. And that's the scary part, is that you could be someone that's been in the hobby a very long time and still be fooled. And it's why there's certain cards I won't even buy ungraded anymore with some of the fake cards, Trout, Jordan rookie, that sort of thing, and others obviously as well. But those are the two that kind of come to mind first. It's scary out there, right? It does, it's not a good look for the hobby, but it's going to be the case anytime, and it's not related. It's not just a hobby thing. Anytime, Wall Street, any kind of financial sector, stamps, coins, if someone can make fake reproductions and dupe people out of their hard-earned money, it's going to happen. Obviously, we're talking about the hobby because we're in the hobby. There's a hobby show, but this is bigger than the hobby. This is just anytime there's money to be had illegally, someone's going to do it and try to do it. So unfortunately, we're going to hear about these stories, every year. And hopefully, the grading card companies stay ahead of the curve with their technology. We're seeing a lot more AI and that sort of thing. But we'll see. Brody, any thoughts here?
I personally have not seen pictures of the fake cards, but like you said, it's scary that they're getting good at it, because I don't really want to put my money towards it because they're that good at it. Um, yeah, it's scary. It's nerve-wracking to spend your money on stuff like that.
Oh, and
Yeah.
note to Mr. Petty, I saw your comment about Ms. Clark. I will note that last night she hit a 3-point dagger to help Indiana steal their first victory of the season versus the Las Vegas Sparks. So there's her obligatory mention for the show. Now we can go back to regular topics.
Yeah, and I see a comment about Bearer's memorabilia, like his awards being stolen. That was melted down. That's so tragic and such a shame. Once you melt, metals down, you can't replace them. And so those awards, and they caught the perpetrators. I hope they get some serious jail time. But that people are even stealing awards. It's not cards. Any kind of memorabilia is a target, and we're seeing it across the board. It's not new. I know we're talking about it. I've talked about it. I've done content creation since November of 2018. I talked about it then. We're still talking about it now, and that goes to my point that it will just be an ongoing thing as long as money can be made. And we just, the hobby, the grading companies, law enforcement, it's kind of our responsibilities to try to, thwart that out, stay ahead of the curve as much as we can. So we're talking about it less. But unfortunately, it's not going to go away. It's not a light switch that you just turn off. All right, all right. Let's move. We can do a whole show on crime in the hobby, but we're not going to do that today, guys. Rich, the Dallas Card Show is in your backyard, and
It's
you
across the street
mentioned,
from my office. I mean, it's 10 minutes from my house, across the street from my office. I walk to the show about half the time.
Yep, I've been there twice. It's a great show. Kyle does a great job. You mentioned, Rich, that the last one or two were a little lower attended. Kind of your thoughts then this leads into a bigger subject: is there an oversaturation of shows? We're seeing a lot of shows now in cities that never had them before. Even here in New York, Rich, in Central New York, in some really small towns, we're starting to see card shows. Can we get to a point there's too many card shows? And your thoughts on a big card show, Dallas, with maybe a little less attendance.
That attendance seemed to be slightly off at the last show. However, many of the dealers I spoke to who were honest with me and are good barometers all told me they had good to better than above average sales at the show, which tells me that it's okay. And what I mean by that is that if the show is a little less crowded, but you can get to dealers' tables and spend money, it actually sometimes makes for a more profitable show than if you have a whole horde of people and you can't get to anybody's table. And so there's that. And I know PSA, the last 11 when they came last year, they were much busier this year than last year. I'll say Chris must have done a great job promoting, and he probably did. And here's the thing, but PSA had a much better show this year than last year at the Dallas Card Show. So there were definitely things that were good money-wise. Whether the attendance was quite where it was another subject, but the show was good for the dealers. And and that's the bottom line. And when I used to run shows, and my friend Kyle Robertson used to run shows, he had a more modern card show, and I had a more old school feel. He would draw more people than I would, but we figured out once that people were spending pretty much the same money. And the thing was that you were more relaxed buying cards at the show when you could actually get to people's tables. So there's something to be said for that both ways. But John, you are right. This is starting to feel reminiscent of the late 80s and early 90s, with shows seemingly everywhere. And I have to be honest, I have my Adat Havarim Brotherhood Synagogue show this weekend. We do it twice a year. This is our 10th anniversary. I've been doing it for 10 years. And I don't feel that I'm really adding to any overload of shows because it's been around for so long. But if I started doing a monthly show again, which I'm not going to do, I don't have the time, the energy, the effort, and I don't want to go against it. But if somebody really wanted to do a good monthly show, there's probably room for a 40, 50 table hotel show in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But could that mean there are too many shows? Possibly.
Well, you got Kyle, who's the promoter of this show. He's going back into your old stomping grounds with doing one in New Jersey now as well. We got Fanatics.
Right. He is. I'm not exactly sure what the correct term is, but he is working with GTSM. And GTSM is an autograph promoter. And they've been getting Kyle big name guests for the last few shows. last weekend they had Josh Hamilton and Michael Young, both very popular Rangers, and the lines were very long for both of them, signing autographs at the show. So what GTSM wanted to start branching out into getting just not dealers for an autograph type show, but for a card show, because they are not known for that. So they are partnering with Kyle Robertson and his Dallas Card Show team to have more card show people at their shows.
You know, now we got Fanatics. Everyone knows this is not breaking news. We got Fanatics putting on different events, more with appearance based, but they're going to have people set up, dealers set up, different locales around the country, New York, Orlando. I'm sure there'll be some West Coast shows. They said they were going to do that. It's not a surprise. You know, even here in Central New York, I do a Watertown show, which is an hour north of here. It's a small show I do very well with. I do the bulk sub with SGC. That's been a big hit there. But that promoter, you know, he messaged me. He's like, I'm doing one in Ogdensburg. I'm doing one in Fulton, New York. Very smaller towns. I can't lock in and be at a show every weekend. My life doesn't allow that to be happening. And I guess that's my concern, Rich and Brody. Can we have too many shows where it becomes, you know, tips the scales in not a good way? Brody, I'll let you weigh in here, and then we'll hear from Rich.
I think eventually, yes, but not yet. Because people are still going to shows and people are still buying cards like crazy. But at the end of the day, people are still buying. Ton of people are still going to go to the National. I bet the Fanatics show is going to be packed. And people are still going to shows like crazy. Eventually, we might see a reduction in shows, but I don't see that for a couple of years. That's my opinion.
I will say that the Dallas Card Show is a very successful show. It's a very good show. I do just fine at the value boxes. Going back to the earlier topic, I like playing with the quarter cards or the dollar cards because the odds are nobody's messing around with them. If you know what you're doing, you do quite well, just bottom feeding and going from there. So there's room, just like at the National, there's room for every budget. Hopefully even at the Fanatics show, where it costs a lot of money to get in the door at the Javits Center, hopefully there'll still be room for people with every budget there and not just the high rollers.
That's the thing.
At the National last year, I found dime boxes.
Rich, you know, one of the things, I went to the Dallas Card Show twice, as you know. It didn't have as much of a corporate feel as the National does, which we get. That's the granddaddy of them all. Has it remained that way? I haven't been there in a couple of years. How's it changed in the last couple of years?
Mainly a dealer-oriented show. Golden has a table or a booth, couple tables there. PSA has a room. Beckett, because it's a home field, has a room. Jeremy Allen has spearheaded a great job for Heritage. They were out in the hallway when you came there. They now have a massive display as you enter the main part of the room. And Jeremy has done a great job in convincing Heritage that's a winning way. You know, and then there's sit and talk there, and they're looking at items, and they're very well protected. Again, they're like under lock and key, and they're brought by Heritage. And granted, it's local in Dallas. I mean, it's an hour and a drive. But they're under lock and key, and somebody's always there to you know, extra security. And I think and then SGC sets up at most of the shows. So there's some corporate presence, but it's not an overwhelming corporate presence.
Brody, have you been to the Dallas Card Show?
I have not been to the Dallas Card Show, no.
Okay.
You need to come, Brody.
It's on my bucket list, yes.
And by the way, let's plug Rex's appearance, since he always puts us on.
Yeah, and Rex, a great friend of the show, part of Hobby News Daily. They're putting an event on where they're bringing Smalls and Squints from the classic movie The Sandlot to Valparaiso, Indiana, to sign autos and introduce the movie in the park on July 2nd and July 12th. So they're coming back. They're leaving and they're coming back 10 days later. Very cool. We know Tops put, I
You're
believe it was
killing me,
Heritage.
Smalls.
That's one of my sound effects on my phone for notifications. And so and that's a really cool event. Tops put them in Heritage, I believe, that insert set in Heritage a couple years ago.
It was in
That's
Archives.
Classic.
Archives.
All right.
It was in Archives.
All right. Thank you for correcting me. So that's a classic movie that a lot of collectors love, a lot of baseball fans love, and it's I know a lot of the actors. Obviously, they're grown up now, kind of making the round. They've even been at the National as appearing there as well. So it's nice to see them going and kind of, even though the movie is not is quite old now, they're still kind of supporting a cult classic. And good on Rex. Contact Rex and reach out to him. And if you're nearby, definitely check that out. Now we mentioned, Rich. You mentioned the Fanatics show at the Javits Center in New York. I would love, from a selfish point of view, as a New York City, my hometown, Brooklyn, New York. I'd love to see a New York City National. I don't know if it'll happen, but does the fact that Fanatics is putting on an event that's pretty good size at the Javits Center, does that open the door potentially for a future
It
national
does.
in New York?
Remember, the one difference with Fanatics and the people running the National is, let's face it, Fanatics has a much deeper pocket, because the dealers, you'd have to charge the dealers a lot of money to do the show. Fanatics is able to, probably with all their deep pockets and other ways they're doing things, keep table prices lower. If you're the National, and I know a little bit, not everything of how this works, the dealers are still the primary thing. And I'm just going to spitball here numbers. So please, this is nothing official. I do not know the numbers, but I'm just going to throw out something. If your booth at the National is $1,500, it could very well be $5,000 for the National. Right now, it costs you, for most Nationals, $4,000 to $5,000 to do the show, unless you live very locally or you do it really, really on the cheap. But it's still an expensive way to do a National. And so if you're doubling or tripling the table costs, you're going from maybe $5K to you have to get back to $10K to getting back. And I'm just spitballing numbers here. You might not have the mix of dealers you want. You might only have higher end dealers. Higher end dealers are wonderful, but then we talk about having, we always use the word the kids, but I use kids to mean people without a lot of disposable income in their pocket. You want someone to be able to afford not just the high end graded cards or the middle end graded cards, but the low end cards too, so they get something for coming to the show. We have Brody TK here, and Brody is representative of a lot of kids. Kids have more money than I ever had when I was growing up. But there is, when we use the word save it for the kids, it's really save it for the people who don't have as much money as you do. And that's my only concern with the Javits, is what will the dealer tables end up costing? Because unless you can get the corporates to really double and triple what they pay, if you do that, then you might be able to get the dealer tables about where they were. And maybe instead of 2x for what a National costs, it's 1.5x. And then you're in a better shape for the dealers. And that's how I look at things like that.
Brody, if the National was in New York City, I know you go to all of them, so I think I know your answer to this, but I'll put you on the spot. It's a little bit of a trip, Chicago to New York. Trust me, I know. I'm in New York. Does that change whether you be there or you would be there?
I haven't been to New York, so I'd probably go, because it'd probably be a fun experience just to go there one time. So yeah, I'd probably go. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to see. Well, here's the thing, Rich. I've had Ray on numerous times. one of the things that prevents, or that he said that prevents it from taking place in New York, is hotel and parking. But if Fanatics is putting on an event, even of this size, does that, I mean, is that correct, or might things be better than they used to be?
No, hotel rooms in New York are off the charts. You'd probably be spending a couple $1,000s for the hotel room. Remember what I was saying about your extra costs? And so Ray knows what he's talking about on that. You
Yeah,
have to have affordable housing for that many guests. And New York does not, Manhattan does not have affordable housing for that many people.
yeah, and then you get the unions. I don't want to, make this a Teamster show, but you got the
This isn't
unions.
this not, but that's a legitimate thing. My friend Mike
Yeah,
Gordon, way back when he was promoting the National in '84, and we would talk about things like that. And Mike's no longer with us. He went to the Javits Center one day, and they said, "Oh, it'll cost you $5,000." He goes, "Sign me up." And they said, "You want to know about everything else?" And the minute they started giving him everything else, he goes, "This isn't going to work, guys." I mean, the tables were much cheaper in those days, and but that was then, and the tables for the National were $100, and they would have been $300. But with everything else, they might have been six, or it would have been so much more in those days. And that was the same problem in 1984 you have in 2024. It's not
yeah,
just the unions, it's the cost of staying there. It's I grew up in the New York area, you grew up in New York. I mean, you grew up in Brooklyn.
yeah.
You know, and that's a real problem. I mean, Cleveland, there are some affordable hotels that you can get to the show from. Chicago, there's some affordable hotels. You're a little away from the show, but you can get to the show from there. Manhattan, good luck with that.
Yeah, a couple comments I want to reply to. Mookie says, "John, come to the East Coast." I need to get back there. It's been many moons. I have been to it in the past. It's been a long time. I'm due to get back there. I talk about an interaction I had with Alan Mr. Mint Rosen at the very East Coast National, again, many moons ago. But I do have to get back there. Michael puts, "I don't care about the National. It's weird how people worship it like a trip to Mecca. I only go for modern products and drops." Here's the deal with the National. It is the mecca of the hobby, whether you like it or not. You don't have to go, but it is the mecca, right? I call it the Super Bowl of the hobby. I've heard other people refer to it as the hobby family reunion, right? It's more than just the show itself. You have the events outside the show, dinners, get-togethers, sporting events, concerts. It's a 5 or 6 day week I look forward to every year. I tell my supervisor I will not be here those 5 or 6 days. I have an event I do every year. If you don't go, there's nothing wrong with that either. But it is the mecca. It is the mecca of the hobby. Not to compare it to a religious pilgrimage in Mecca like the Hajj, but it is the hobby comparison to that. Doesn't mean you have to go. It doesn't mean if you don't go, you're not part of the hobby. You're very much a part of the hobby, whether you go to the national. I went to my first national, I believe, in 2017, Rich and Brody, and I've been in the hobby 40 years. So all those previous 30 something years I didn't go to national, I was still part of the hobby. But now I try to make a point to go every year. I enjoy it. It's a great opportunity to see people that, for either the first time and meet them, or kind of reconnect with your friends and hobby friends. And it's more than just the cards, although that's the common thread that we're all in the hobby for. So to me, it is the mecca. It might not be for somebody else, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not just like someone shouldn't criticize someone for saying it is. I'm not going to criticize someone for saying it ain't. It isn't for them. For me, it's that week I circle. Rich, I know you, Brody. I don't want to speak for you. You're right here. But to me, it's a week I look forward to every year. It goes quick, and then we count down the days to the next one. Your thoughts, guys, whoever wants to go there.
Well, you
John,
said
I think you said that very well.
yeah. You said it perfectly. It's the week about the cards that it's more about the cards. We see people in the hobby in person and we talk to them about cards. It's perfect.
I see Ziggy or Michael's following up with it's for a conference for dealers. There are more people not dealers there than dealers. The patrons outnumber the dealers. I don't know how much fold. What do you think, Rich? 100 to 1 for every dealer. There's 100 people attending the show.
Well, since some of
Maybe
the
more.
people
I might be
walking
low.
around are dealers, it may be 10 to 1 or 12 to 1, but it's definitely that.
I'm a dealer locally. I don't set up at the National, but I go to the National. I buy cards. We do our hobby hotline dinner. Um, I'm going to the Guardians Tigers game this year on Wednesday. You've got other events. You got the Mark Evans, Dick Perez movie screening for the Diamond King. It's more than a card show, and the card show is great enough, right? And then you got all those added incentives and extras to enjoy. If you don't want to go to National and save a few bucks, I get it. I fully get it. I didn't go to the National. I started in 1979. I didn't go to the National until 2017. So who am I to say, hey, if you don't go to the I wouldn't do that even if I could. So I get it. But for me, it's my hobby vacation every year, right? We take regular vacations. We maybe go to Cape Cod or Hawaii or wherever you select. This is my hobby vacation that I go every year. My wife knows about it. She goes if there's a beach. She went to Atlantic City and enjoyed the beach. If there's no beach, I'm going. I'm going on my own. So that's how I view it. To each their own, right? Hobby your way, as I always say. But it is the biggest event right now in the hobby, whether you go or not. That's the case.
Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. So, Brody, do you have anything? What are your hobby plans this weekend?
Well, King and Queen of the Rings today, so I'll be watching some wrestling. Chronicles WWE just came out, so I wrote the box of that yesterday. Enjoyed that. Pretty much.
Who are your graphs? Did you get any graphs?
I got a Rey Mysterio auto redemption, but excited to get that one from Panini. That'll be cool. I don't have a Rey Mysterio auto, so that'll be cool.
Hasn't he been around a long time? And wasn't he in WWE too at one point?
Yeah, he's been around a long time. He was in WCW as well.
Yeah, I remember he's good.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and here's a perfect example, guys. Mike Petty, who's a hobbyist just like all of us, right? He hasn't been in National since 1991. He's still an important part of the hobby. It doesn't matter whether you go or you don't go. I just enjoy going. I guess that's the point I'm trying to drive home and being like a dead horse. So the National doesn't validate you. We validate ourselves with being active participants in the hobby. I always said that. We always try to look at to other people to validate our existence. Validate yourself. So whether you go to National or not, just be active in the hobby if you enjoy it. And that's it. If you enjoy the National, go to National. If it's not your thing, we won't see you there. I mean, nothing wrong with either side of that coin.
Bingo.
Well
Rich,
said.
yeah.
Thank you for hosting. I have my show this weekend. We're coming up to the top of the hour. John is starting to cough. He's about done for the hour. So let's get the show done so John can cough in peace.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. Everyone in the chat dealing with a little bit of a cold. I'll survive, I hope. But I haven't been on in 3 months. I didn't want to miss after being out for 3 months. So I ran the intro. Right. Let's see if I can eventually run the outro here. All right. But guys, and everyone in the chat, everyone listening, even after the fact, I wish everybody a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend. Again, take a moment to think about others not with us here today, so we can be and enjoy the things that we enjoy. So with that being said, thanks everybody. We'll see you in 7 days.